Hi everyone. So this video will explain the presenter role and what is expected of you when it's your turn to be your team's presenter. So the goal of the presenter, simple. Communicate your team's analysis about how this week's topic affects your offender. Now this does not mean retell the entire life story. No, don't want to hear that. It does not mean summarize all this week's readings. Don't want to hear that either. So you should focus on explaining the most important ways that the module concepts apply to your offender's experiences, to their risks, opportunities, outcomes, etc. Now, as presenter, you're going to work with your team before or during your class discussion to identify the key points that you want to share. During the class, then, after you have this small group time, you'll deliver a brief 3 to 5 minute presentation summarizing your team's conclusions. You should be prepared to explain your reasoning and to reference relevant research when appropriate. Remember that strong presentations focus on analysis rather than summary. So ask yourself, what does this week's topic mean for my offender? Why does it matter? So let me give you a quick example. So imagine your offender has a history of substance abuse, and this week's topic is reentry. A weak presentation would say, our offender has struggled with substance abuse for many years. They'll probably have a difficult time after release because of their addiction. Well, that's true, right? But that doesn't really tell us a lot why those challenges matter. So a stronger presentation that brings in the research and the evidence-based analysis will say, our offender's history of substance abuse creates several reentry concerns. So research suggests, so this would come from an article, individuals with substance abuse disorders often face difficulties maintaining employment and housing after release. And these are important factors in reducing recidivism. So here you've given me like actual empirical data. You can also talk about, well, my offender has limited family support and a history of relapse. And so we think that access to community treatment and ongoing supervision is going to be really important. And we also are worried about our person's lack of a GED because that's going to affect their reentry. We know that that is a barrier because of research. And so because of that, we would recommend participation in this type of training module, as well as substance abuse treatment and GED preparation. And this is our goal, is that these programs would then affect the offender's critical thinking patterns, decision-making skills, and that's going to help them build up their job skills for long-term employment prospects. So notice both of those said the same things, right? Both of those said, my person has a substance abuse disorder and it's going to make reentry hard. But one of them gave us specific research behind it, not name and date of, so-and-so said, no, not that level, but a summary. Like, we know that we found research that says if you have a substance use issue, it's going to affect housing and employment. Here's our plan to increase their odds at successful employment as well as work on their substance abuse issue. So it's a multifaceted plan. It has multiple challenges that they're talking about, and this would represent a really strong piece of the presentation. That wouldn't be 3 to 5 minutes, obviously, but that gives you an idea of like how you can take something that's relatively simple as a statement and you can support it with this evidence behind it. So in terms of presentation, in terms of grading, the presenter role does not require a separate submission. You're going to be graded based on your oral presentation during class time. So I'll be recording all of the classes. I'll be taking live grades, but I'll also be going back through the recordings, and you'll be graded on the 3 to 5 minute presentation that you give to your class during class time. So you want to make sure that you prepare as best you can during your team's breakout room so that you're prepared to present at the end of the time. Now, something to note, because I always think it's important to say, when I'm evaluating presentations, I am not grading you on whether you reach the same conclusions that I would. That's not fair. Corrections is a complex field, and there's often more than one reasonable way to analyze a situation. So I'm not thinking about is your presentation right or wrong. What I'm thinking about is the quality of your analysis. Did you apply this week's concepts to your offender? Did you explain why those concepts matter? Did you bring in evidence from the articles that you and your teammates read? And did you identify meaningful risks, barriers, interventions, etc., in a way that made sense to people who aren't as familiar with your offender? Strong presentations will demonstrate clear critical thinking, and they'll make clear connections between the offender, the course content, and the correctional system overall. Weaker presentations will focus primarily on summary. They may repeat a lot of information that I gave you, information from the offender's profile, or they'll make claims, like I mentioned, without explaining why they matter, like, hey, substance abuse is a problem. So to be successful in this role, pay close attention to your team's discussion during small group time, and you want to identify the top 2, 3, 4, 5 things that are the most important takeaways from this week's content as it applies to your offender. Again, you don't need to cover every single idea that your team discussed, but you should focus on the significant ones, and you should support your conclusions with evidence and help us as a class understand why those issues in particular matter for your offender. Good luck, and I look forward to your presentation.